Hi guys, welcome to this video. Today I want to talk to you about classics that I personally think are easy to approach, easy to read. Now I know there are a lot of videos already out there about this topic, but of course it always depends on the person recommending these books, what they personally think is an easy to read classic. So here are my picks. Now a lot of these are not exactly original. There's a certain canon of classics out there that of course all of these videos kind of pick from, so a lot of these you will have probably already heard about, but especially with the ones that are fairly well known, I want to focus more on how I personally managed to access these classics, how I personally managed to find my way into them, because that might also be helpful, I think. So let's start off with one of these people that you will have heard about before, but this is going to be more about how I personally managed to, get into this person's work. Who I'm talking about is Shakespeare. Now, what got me personally into Shakespeare is a particular play of him that it is not one of Shakespeare's most renowned plays, such as I think Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth. Those are probably Shakespeare's most well-known plays. To people who also are not really interested in Shakespeare, they have heard about these plays before. But the play that got me into Shakespeare is Much Ado About Nothing. Much Ado About Nothing is a comedy, and it is absolutely divine. And now I did not jump right into the play itself when I got into Shakespeare. What got me first into this particular play and then into Shakespeare in general was a certain movie adaptation of this play by Kenneth Branagh. It must be from the 90s, I believe. Maybe it's even older than that. It stars Kenneth Branagh himself, but I believe he also directed it. It stars next to him Emma Thompson. Keanu Reeves is also in it, though he doesn't play one of the major parts. Denzel Washington is part of it as well, and a lot of other famous actors. Now, this adaptation is very true to the work. I'm also going to talk about movie adaptations later on that are inspired by particular pieces, but can't really be claimed to be close to the work itself anymore. But this adaptation is a very true to the work adaptation. It helped me to realize how funny the things were that were going on, what was being said, especially the banter between Benedict and Beatrice. It is to die for. It is absolutely divine. But just reading it, I wouldn't have even realized that, because when I got into this particular play, I was still quite young, in my teenage years, and I know had I just picked up the play, tried to read it, I would have missed all of that for sure. But this adaptation of this play really helped me to see what these lines actually contain, because often we of course get distracted by the language that is kind of hard to access, the line breaks on what we're used to in our modern day reading. So quite often we read this and we kind of fail to produce images in our head because we're too occupied with trying to understand what is literally going on, and often not even be able to do that. So a fantastic movie adaptation such as this Much Ado About Nothing one is really helped me to see the beauty of this particular work. And because then I really started to like this specific play, and my family and I, we often watch that one movie, and then I also reread this a couple of times. I became interested in Shakespeare on a broader level. Now, I already mentioned that also movie adaptations that are not as closely linked to the original work anymore, such as this Much Ado About Nothing adaptation, can still help you to get interested into a classic, help you understand what the plotline of that classic is supposed to be. And such a one is a movie that is based on this work. Do you already know it? Well, the secret shall be revealed. 10 Things I Hate About You, an absolute Y2K classic. A lot of people really love that movie. Understandably so, it is really cute. It's based on The Taming of the Shrew. 10 Things I Hate About You. It's just a fun movie to watch. You definitely understand what is going on when you watch it, and you're just having a good time. And such movie adaptations can introduce the general topics of a classic to you, and also then afterwards make you interested in reading the classic this particular movie or whatever media it might be is actually based on. So that's how I did it with this one. I really got into the movie, watched it several times, and then I heard it was based on The Taming of the Shrew, and it got me intrigued, and so I picked this one up. Now, I found this one still, even though I had the movie and the basic plot line through the movie laid out in my head, I still found this one pretty hard to read. I haven't tried to reread it ever since I like read it for the first time like a couple of years ago. But still, this modern day movie adaptation of a classic inspired me to try to pick it up. Another modern movie Shakespeare adaptation is She's the Man, starring Amanda Bynes. I love that movie. It's ridiculous, and that is based on Twelfth Night. And actually, the plot of Twelfth Night is represented pretty accurately in She's the Man, but obviously, like, the context could not be more different. But when you watch She's the Man, you're having a great time. You understand what's going on, what's happening, etc. You see the fun in it all. And again, the movie inspired me to read the play. And of course, you read it with different eyes. You kind of always look out for similarities and differences between like the movie, modern day movie adaptation, and the original piece of work, but that's also fun to do. And if it helps you to kind of like access sometimes how to read pieces of work, go for it. Another author that has been adapted both in a very true to the work style but also in a very like loose modern adaptation is Jane Austen. Since we have just been talking about these modern movie adaptations, let's also talk about the work that has inspired, again, a Y2K classic, and that is Clueless, starring, Alicia Silverstone? Pretty sure that's her name. But yeah, Emma is the work this movie is based on. Again, we had the same trope. I had heard about Emma, but was never quite intrigued to read it because I was like, she's pretty thick. I don't really know. Would I really be interested in that? I saw Clueless, was having a grand old time, was really enjoying that one. Found out it was based on Emma, was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should give this one a try. And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. Other Jane Austen work that I personally also found to be quite enjoyable. Now this again kind of has to do with me having watched a quite classic adaptation of this early on in my childhood and having rewatched it. And that's how I kind of got into Pride and Prejudice. And that is the BBC adaptation. I believe it also must be from the 90s. It is a bit older, but it is quite beautiful. And we used to watch it like every summer with my family, even at a time when I did not yet speak like coherent English and I didn't really understand anything that was going on. I only like saw the pictures, and we kept rewatching that over and over again until me and my sister, we started to understand more and more and more. But like, funnily enough, even like these days when I rewatch it, though I haven't rewatched it in a while now, it's sometimes crazy to me that I understand everything that is being said. Because for so many years of my life, I watched it not understanding kind of like a single word or like only very little of it. So still to this day, I watch it and I'm like, wow, I understand what's going on, what is being said. That's a really funny experience. Anyway, but that personally introduced Pride and Prejudice into my life. That was like the first Jane Austen work that I got introduced to. Then later on, I started to pick up Emma. Now the last novel by Jane Austen I picked up only in 2021 actually, was Northanger Abbey. Now this, you can already see like a big difference. Seems more easy to approach simply because it is a thinner book. It is not such a daunting aspect as this book is. This one I personally also deem a easy to read, easy to approach classic because of the storyline. It's almost a parody of the Gothic novel, and in that sense, we have some absurd stuff happening in here, but that makes it quite funny to read as well. In the first half, we're still in Bath. In the second half, we are spending our days at Northanger Abbey, where all of these mysterious events, or maybe not so mysterious, are taking place basically. Because a lot of stuff happened in general in the book. We have some changes of location. The book is thin in general. I found this also quite easy to read actually. Now, staying on this topic of classics being made accessible through the like cool plot lines they present to you, these two books right here I found to be in that category as well. Now, I recently read Dracula and I really enjoyed it. Now, this is kind of built up in a epistolary novel form. Epistola is Latin and means letter. That means like the book is not written in chapters, but that plots are being conveyed through like the letters that the protagonists, the characters send to one another. This book actually does not work with letters most of the time, but with diary entries by our protagonist. Now, of course, with Dracula, you already know kind of what it's about. It has like these fantasy themes of vampires, of course. It has the well-known theme of fantasy, the vampire that has to be battled in this book. Now, this book also looks quite dauntingly big, but I promise you that's only my edition of it. You can see it has quite thick white borders. It is also written in quite a big print, and also like the paper is quite thick. Like if you look at other editions of this book, it's only like half the size basically. But with this one, it having this like approachable, I think, fantasy sci-fi plotline, you were guaranteed action basically, and that also had me go into this without any fear of being bored, because at least for me that is often the thing that kind of stops me sometimes from picking up classics, because I'm like, what's even happening in that big ass book? Am I gonna be bored as hell? Because personally, I don't like character driven books. I like there to be action in the novels that I'm reading. But this was provided in this for sure. We are hunting down a vampire across all of Europe. Obviously, shit is going down in this one. Another book that had a very intriguing plotline is The Picture of Dorian Gray. Now, I'm not even fully finished with that one, though. I just had like my one uni class today where we already talked about this. So the things that I have not yet read, I got spoiled for today because we were talking about the ending as well, and well, I had to listen to the others talk about it, so I know how it's gonna end now, but I'm almost finished with it myself. Now, The Picture of Dorian Gray is about a couple of rich young men in London who are very privileged. They have nothing other to do than spend their money, eat at clubs, drink cocktails, and go to the opera and the theater, basically. They have no worries in their life. One of them is Dorian Gray, being known all over London for being so extremely handsome. He's an Adonis. And the people around him, especially a few of them, convince him more and more of his own beauty and make him a very vain person. Then a portrait is being made of him, and he voices this plea to the gods that this picture of him may age in his place. He wants to stay young and beautiful and adored by all, and this picture should take on the job of growing old for him. Oh dear God, please. So his wish is basically granted. This picture of him starts to grow old while he stays young. But ultimately, you do not only see the signs of age in this picture, in this portrait of him, but also signs of moral decay as Dorian continues to lead his life in anything but a respectable fashion. He himself stays young and innocent looking, but he himself gets to see what he would look like, what he has become in this picture that he has to look at every single day at home. They're quite dramatic events happening from then on. There's death involved, several deaths actually. And I mean, all of that in this thin little, I almost just want to call it like a novella. Can you even call this like a full-on book? Whatever it may be, I am thoroughly enjoying this. Somehow it is a very light and easy to read novel, but it has like a very profound message, of course, if you think about it. The beautiful descriptions of London, of surroundings, of nature, of art, of all of that in here, but at the same time like discussions about philosophical topics, not always meant to be taken seriously, but still discussions nonetheless. So in various aspects, I found this to be a very compelling read, or I am still finding it to be a compelling read. And since it is so short, in that sense alone, I find it to be easily approachable, because like I think you're more likely to kind of pick up a classic that is this size when you not know if you're gonna like it or not than, let's say, Anna Karenina, right? Now the next classic I want to recommend to you, now this might actually be a bit of a unique recommendation by myself. Like, I'm sure you have heard of all the authors and the works that I have mentioned so far, but this one you might have not heard about yet. That is P.G. Wodehouse. Now, P.G. Wodehouse's work has basically a very similar setup to what I just told you about Dorian Gray, as like we have these very rich young men with nothing to do but to enjoy their life in London. Well, those are also a protagonist in all of P.G. Wodehouse's works, but while in Dorian Gray, some of these young men still have thoughts, still have brains and intelligence. The one in P.G. Wodehouse's works tend not to have that. In other words, we have these brainless yet still charming young men being the protagonists of all of P.G. Wodehouse's works. They always get into one scramble or another. Usually it involves some aunt of theirs trying to marry them off to some girl they don't want to get married to, and they always have to kind of try to get out of those situations again. And always they have to do that with the help of their trusted staff, usually like their butlers, because they got the real brains. The most famous of P.G. Wodehouse series is the Jeeves and Wooster series, I would claim. I also got to know P.G. Wodehouse via a TV adaptation, the TV series adaptation of Jeeves and Wooster starring Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. It is, again, superbly made. I can only recommend it to you. I absolutely love P.G. Wodehouse's work. Now, you might think, oh my gosh, this is a huge-ass book, but nah, it is not, because this is only a collection of all the short stories, because most of the, at least Jeeves and Wooster stories, are short stories, and also a lot of the Blandings ones as like has other people starring in it, but basically a very similar setup. And this again is separated into very small, very funny short stories. So with P.G. Wodehouse, I'm sure you would be able to find like 1 or 2 of his short stories out there on the internet somehow. I can only recommend you to like give them a shot, to read one of those like really short stories, see if it's like up your alley or not. Personally, I think they are divine. The English, also like the language used in them, it is superb. It is so funny. I really love me some P.G. Wodehouse. Now, last but not least, some classics that read almost like fairy tale because they're such heartwarming stories are these ones right here. Now, we're starting off with Little Women. Now, Little Women is the beautiful and very sweet account of the lives of 4 sisters. I, again, got into this classic because I first watched a very recent movie adaptation of this, the one starring Saoirse Ronan, Meryl Streep, Emma Watson, Timothée Chalamet, and like some other famous actors. It was an excellent movie adaptation. It is utterly sweet and heartwarming and soothing. It kind of reads like a fairy tale, though it is also really realistic. Of course, I can't do anything to talk away the length of this book. She is a thick one, but if I'm not mistaken, there are like children's versions of The Little Women, because it is an American classic, that are only like half the size because they kind of condensed it for the children. Language-wise, it could not be made easier to read because this is perfectly easy and understandable. So what I could recommend you with this one, either like watch the movie first if you see yourself interested in it, give it a go. You don't have to read this in a week. You can take your time with it, or you can pick up a children's version of it first that is a bit shorter, or it gives you like a good understanding of the story. I don't know. I'm sure they didn't cut out anything in the children's story, but maybe more like condensed it down a bit, which maybe they weren't wrong about that. But so this is a really sweet read, just as much as Anne of Green Gables is, though this is even sweeter. Now this, again, it reads like a fairy tale because it is so heartwarming. This is about 11-year-old orphan Anne being adopted into a family. And now Anne, she could not be more full with the joy of life. She sees beauty in everything and everyone. She really teaches the reader how to enjoy the little things in life, and also especially there's a lot of nature aspects in Anne of Green Gables because this takes place on Prince Edward Island in Canada, I believe. It is so sweet and heartwarming. I can really recommend it, though this is the first book in a series. I have not only read, but I have read this and the 3rd book of the series, where Anne goes off to college. And now I really loved the 1st book. I can really only recommend it to you, and I would definitely reread this one. But the 3rd book in the series, that must be one of the most boring books I have ever read in my life. Now, I actually DNF'd it for like a couple of months. I could not bring myself to like finish or continue reading it. So I like had to lay it down, not touch it for I think at least like 6 months. And then I only picked it up again and, well, finished it because I wanted to finish it. So yeah, the 3rd one really didn't do it for me because not because there was anything like wrong with it, but I personally found it to be so boring. But the 1st one is not boring at all. The 1st one is really sweet. It makes you feel all fuzzy with love you feel for the world, basically. Now, last but not least, all work by Frances Hodgson Burnett strikes the same chord as these other 2 books. So heartwarming. I know I said that word a billion times in the last couple of minutes, but that is truly the best word I can describe these works with. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Frances Hodgson Burnett wrote The Secret Garden, The Little Princess, and I think she's also the author of Little Lord Fauntleroy, and that's like my favorite Christmas story. Now here I have this beautiful Nina Lima illustrated edition, so with this one, not only the plot line, but also like the making of this book, the illustrations were absolutely beautiful. So if you're in the mood for like a classic that reads like a fairy tale, definitely pick up anything by Burnett. Okay guys, now these were all the books I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope you got inspired by any of them maybe, or maybe some of the things I talked about help you to pick up any of these classics or some other works, whatever it may be. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye.